Italy? Whiskey? Ah, Italy, you could never look at my secret. Oh no! Suddenly, hello, lady! Let's begin. Indeed.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. My name is Brian, and this is the Fireside Chat. And today, I have a very special guest. I should have asked you before we got started if because I was curious about how to pronounce your name. So maybe you can. Should I take a guess, or maybe you could just tell me how to say it right, so I don't embarrass myself.
So my name is Arpu Kumar.
Okay, all right. That's what I thought it was, and I can roll my R's pretty well, so I wouldn't have a problem getting the R roll out of there. Arpu. So Arpu Kumar, and you're a human rights lawyer who essentially it appears that your focus is on the issues facing men and boys, and
Yes.
I think that's very exciting because I think it's absolutely necessary. Um, so yeah, welcome to the show, Ms. Kumar. First of all,
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on this show. And it's been a long association for both of us on Twitter. And finally, me being part of this show with Honey Badger Radio, it gives me an honor to be representing my interests, and also trying to share my work profile and create awareness even in a different continent than that I'm working in, which is like Europe or UK. So I'm excited to be going live with you today from US. So it's my first with the US based radio show. I feel grateful to you for having me on this show. Thank you.
yeah, that's great. Do you get a lot of get on other shows like in other countries? Because we always feel like sometimes we have shows, almost 5 days a week, usually about 5 days a week. We're constantly talking about these issues, but because we're mostly, Americans and Canadians and a couple of British, we're not really like, connected with, or we only hear occasionally about men's issues going on in countries like in India, which we have often said, this is sort of like where this fight is the most, like public or the most popular or well known. But sometimes you can feel like you're a little isolated, when you don't know what's happening in India, or for example in South Korea there's a big rise in men's rights activism and stuff. So what other, like, how much progress do you think is being made in these other countries?
Okay, so I would thank you for the question. First of all, I would like to uh, put it in thoughts. Like you've said that, have I been to other countries? Like in podcasts and shows. So the answer is yes. I've been with a journalist interviewing me at least 6 to 7 times in Spain. So it's a Air TV, channel they operate on, and it's called Air TV. So Rodney Health, he's a renowned journalist in Spain who has interviewed me quite a few times about not only my work with Split the Difference, the company that I work with, but also of the independent research that I continue to do as my own interests continue to diversify, not only in terms of men and boys, but also taking up research related to children's rights currently. And then I have been associated with Philippine-based radio station, which is called DVIZ. So they invited me in the month of April this year to talk about, just before Philippines was going into elections, it was in the month of May that it went in election. So in April, I had a radio show with them talking about the rights of men, in particular the rights of fathers. So I discussed about divorce law, I discussed about parental abduction, parental alienation. So these are the issues that I have been to with the Philippine radio station. And as far as India is concerned, as I have been out of India for more than now 2.5, 3 years, so I haven't been much associated with any podcasts or radio programs in India. But yes, while I used to practice as a litigation attorney in India, that was in until 2018 it was. So I used to represent male clients most of the times because that was my practice as I dealt with cases related to custody battles, divorce and other matrimonial disputes, and domestic abuse legislation. So the second part of your question concerned the recent developments of law related to men's rights or per se men's rights movements. I would just like to share that it is heartening to see that a lot of men activists are coming at the forefront to discuss about the issues that concern them. And the recent case of Johnny Depp and the false allegations, it has actually brought the men's issues and the law that actually does not support them as much as it does support women. It has brought everything to a central point whereby men have started gaining voices, garnering support, and knowing that they do have a right and they do have a choice as well. Just like as women, we have a choice to make what to do and what not to, and what are the benefits that as citizens of any country we have being women citizens, especially. So definitely one, men's rights movements are gaining momentum. Number two, I would also be delighted to share the developments I've been seeing, that a lot of women are actually coming in support of men who need not only support from their own gender, which is men supporting men, but men supporting women. But there are, as we know, detractors, of this viewpoint that if a man talks about man's issues, it doesn't get more attention as much it gets when a man's issues are being talked about by a woman. That's what I face as a compliment and a criticism. But I feel happy and I'm open to even say that gender is complementary. Men and women are created by the mother nature to exist and coexist peacefully. So it's not only just a human rights perspective as a human rights lawyer or a professional, but also balanced perspective, which I like to maintain and share with all my audience, that as men and women, we are supposed to be helping each other grow, nourish, and flourish. And we are not supposed to be cutting down on each other because of the political narrative that has been created, because of the biased gender narrative that has been created. And to sum up this question's answer, my journey into all of this started soon after I passed out my master's in international human rights law from Birmingham City University in the UK. I did my LLM in international human rights law, and as I was writing my thesis to finally complete my postgrad, I came across a lot of journals whereby I actually started looking at research, that why UN supports more focused agendas that centrally revolve around women, girls, and their issues. why WHO has language and a narrative that exclusively supports women and girls and nothing to do with men and boys, why we have International Women's Day recognized so much so that everybody knows that 8th of March every year will be celebrated as International Women's Day. And we have Twitter accounts, we have so many social media aspects of that particular day, along with so many other days like Valentine's Day, Mother's Day. Everything revolves around women,
Yeah.
basically. So
Yeah.
I kept looking at the bias, I kept looking at the discrimination in language, in narrative, in the political arena, the way leaders represent themselves as favoring women and children and not favoring men and boys. So this all actually kept me on my toes, not only to evolve as a human rights professional, but also to find out why this bias exists at the root level. And then I found my work with Split the Difference, which is a community interest company, a not for profit it is. And it's based in Cardiff. And they exclusively look into the gaps in the policy, the way governance systems actually work, where they have, gaps, where they do not support men and boys as much they support women and girls. So we ended up identifying at least 13 areas of services, starting with education, housing, uh, you know, criminal justice administration system, family courts, and so on and so forth, where we have seen discrimination against men and boys and not as much as is allegedly presented against women and girls. So that is my entry point and that is my discovery.
I'm glad that you launched into that, because my next question was going to be like, if you had some experience that was like the catalyst for you getting involved in the issues facing men and boys, because I find that a lot of the time it's because of some personal thing that people experience. Like with men who get involved, it's because they end up in a divorce, or they experienced discrimination because they're men, or something like that. They lose access to their children. But it sounds like you just sort of like put two and two together. It seems very logical. Why do you believe, out of curiosity, why do you think the UN doesn't acknowledge like men's achievements, or discusses men's issues? Why do you think they have such a focus on women, and they even have a UN women and there's no UN men, right? Why do you think that is?
Well, it's a very interesting question. And about you and men, I would also like to share with you that Split the Difference and myself, we are actually pushing, for a signature campaign through change.org. I can share the link with you for our audience to sign it. We are pushing ahead for a UN men, and we are looking at all the back door and the front door entry points to not only persuade the United Nations to initiate an open dialogue to have UN men and the need for it, and also a countrywide action in the UK to have more policies there is a violence against women strategy in the UK to protect women against all the crimes like domestic abuse, rape, and all the crimes that affect women. So we have been pushing the UK government to launch a strategy which is a violence against boys and men strategy on the lines of VOG, which is violence against women and girls strategy, so that it could be even, whatever services and choices women have, the same choices and services men could also have access to, and hence we can claim that we are a gender equal nation, or a country that supports gender equality in its truest sense. And now coming back to the question, why I feel that UN does not support men's rights or men and boys' rights as much as it supports women and girls' rights. So my answer would be that since the the onset of feminism, which has been early 1960s, it started on a good note, whereby everybody who thought or called herself or himself to be a feminist, they have been actually representing the interests of those women who probably did not have rights to vote, equal pay, an equal say in the household, and were discriminated against in terms of health, employment, housing, education, and even their right to have children or not to have children, which is in case of like sterilization drives we hear. So abortions, we know recent debates around abortions in the UK as well as the states, the Caden slow verdict, and all the legislations that we've been seeing. So my answer is maybe when it started on a good note, and UN or WHO as international organizations wanted to support women so that women from Asia, women from Africa, women from all the societies where they were discriminated against, even in the UK, even in the United States, women, we know that how many women presidents or prime ministers we have had, and it's delightful to note that today the UK has just elected its third woman prime minister, and we hope that she serves both the genders and not just women interests. So UN just ended up supporting women's rights movements and creating a stream of funding in order to make sure that the patriarchal shackles women have been claiming to be bound by, they are broken, and women attain highest possible levels of education, realize all their human rights. And with the advancement of information and technology, globalization, privatization, and liberalization in the 1980s to 1990s, women actually gained more momentum in terms of representing their own interests, because trade unions had women members, women representatives, women heads world over. And then we had women educationists, academicians, lawyers, politicians who represented you. We remember Margaret Thatcher's era, 1979s and 80s, when she was elected. And all these times of history, they continued showing women are powerful, they are gaining power. But at the same time, the practices of UN or the governance model that they started with continued supporting only the one side of the coin, which is women and girls, forgetting that if there is human trafficking, there is no research even till date which shows how many men and boys have been trafficked, from the countries, for example, Sudan. Human trafficking is very much prevalent. Whole of West Africa, in fact, human trafficking is prevalent. So the lack of quality research actually did not become or did not highlight itself so much so to gather anybody's attention to bring it to the central point where UN would take note of it. And then UN Women has been there to push forward the agenda, the rights, and then the not-for-profits that actually feed themselves from the stream which UN run for UN women-related organizations that support for the rights of women and girls. So it continued to the extent, and today we have reached at a point where people like all of us can say, enough is enough, because we are equalitarians, or as I would like to call myself, that I would like to call a spade a spade. If a man is wrong, if a woman is wrong, I would like to call it as it is without taking sides, me being a woman or me being a human rights defender. So the UN practices have, or the WHO's model of giving funding, or the World Bank's practice of launching campaigns, they have sent they have their central points as women and girls, forgetting that there are men and boys also who are out of schools, who suffer more. And according to reports, even as latest as 2020 researches, because now there are researchers, doing research on how many men are affected by domestic abuse, how many men die due to occupational hazards or in the war or human trafficking, and so on and so forth. So now academicians or intelligent academic intelligence, has started to do research, and findings are also getting published in various journals. And we have platforms like your platform to come and speak in favor of men's rights, but also show that gender equality means where both the genders are equal, or at least strive to be equal. You cannot have a level playing field by just projecting one gender to be more vulnerable than the other, which is the practice by the UN. So whatever they have contributed is like a blind spot. And as we know, a term which is gaining a huge popularity these days, it's empathy gap. So it is particularly empathy gap from these international organizations that have been created to not only focus on burning issues that the world faces today, but also to let humanity exist peacefully, coexist peacefully, and realize their human rights, which are irrevocable, inalienable, and indispensable to all human beings, irrespective of their gender or race, caste, creed, nationality, or anything for that matter. So empathy gap and the blind spot that they have created for themselves, especially in terms of UN women being the only powerful organ. Even Security Council, I believe, is not as powerful as UN Women is powerful, is so much more powerful.
Yeah.
So UN Women focuses on the issues related to women and girls alone, and we've been pitching for UN Men on lines of UN Women. I even if audience would like to check on Split the Difference, there is an open letter which I wrote to UN Women Chief last year in 2021 to push forward for an agenda to have UN men, giving reasons why we need UN men. My only reason would be because we have men. You needed UN women because you have women. So another point is there is a Sustainable Development Goals Agenda 2030, which is very much popular these days. And this agenda has gender equality as one of its goals. There are 17 goals, and one of the goals is gender equality. So this Sustainable Development Goal, which is Agenda 2030, it also focuses on women empowerment, women and girls development, and every issue that concerns women and girls. So this is a practice from the United Nations, from the WHO, from the IBRD formerly, which is now the World Bank. They have actually focused their attention on women and girls mainly because they have found that if we support this agenda, this is politically more conducive to all the political regimes in the world, because women and children are considered more vulnerable, and every man would like to protect women and girls more than he would even think about protecting his own brethren, which is men and boys. So this makes it easy for them to have the political goals achieved. This makes them come in a more comfortable position where they can claim funding, investment, have their business interests met. So these are few opinions that I have on these questions, that why UN supports or why it does what it does just for women and girls and not for boys and men.
Yeah, I think that the blind spot is probably a large part of it. Sometimes I think that the people involved in UN Women are a bit ideological, which is to say that they tend to focus on women because they're feminists, and the entire feminist ideology is based at its foundation, there is a belief that men mistreated women throughout most of history, and it's I don't think it's correct. I think that because what it does is it creates a narrative of antagonism between men and women. And so if you buy into the idea that men are antagonists of women, then you're not going to have a lot of sympathy for men who are struggling with problems. And so, it's like it's a narrative thing that has an effect down the line. Would you think that, and this is just my thinking, so I like the idea of a UN men, although I would be wary of like how it frames the narrative around men and masculinity, because I've noticed that, there is a lot of talk about what men's issues, but they're framed in such a way that men are blamed for their own issues. So it's, if we acknowledge women's issues, then no one says, well, this is women's fault. We just say, okay, yeah, let's address these things. But when we talk about men's issues, it's usually like, well, this is men's fault, right? And I wouldn't want that, because, men who need help, and it doesn't really matter, like we shouldn't be pointing fingers at this or that, but that seems to be an important part. But wouldn't it be better, and I know that this would probably upset some people, if there wasn't a UN men or a UN women, but there was just a human rights group, like that it represented everybody? Because it's sort of like, maybe I'm wrong, but I guess if we just treated everyone the same and we just had one, like human rights United Nations group that would essentially just address everyone's issues individually and don't take into account the gender, or these things, because we just don't, like, there's just too many people and we're all too different for us to like, start throwing people into categories, like, and ironically or interestingly enough, it would actually satisfy people who, like sort of are a part of that non-binary, not male nor female, trans, like it would actually account for everyone.
Well, interestingly, I would like to share that we do have UN Human Rights Council. So they do look at human rights issues that affect all of us, irrespective of our gender. But again, if you analyze the policy drafts or the conference contents or the papers that are part of archives on the UN website, you'll see that largely the focus is given to the terms related to women and girls, and even the words women and girls are repeated more often than you will find mention of men and boys. So there's a research paper I have been reading. I've just lost it somewhere in my tabs. As I told you, I've got so many tabs open. But I was going through a research paper. It's written in 2020. So it had an analysis of how many tweets from 2008 till date UN has mentioned women and girls in, how many tweets have a mention of men and boys, and how categorically they deny when there are men facing issues of inaccessibility to healthcare services, and whereas women's access to healthcare services are not only popularized but also advertised to the extent that everybody will know if a new scheme has rolled out in favor of women to support their claim to having access to free healthcare services or any healthcare services for that matter. So when it comes to categorization, I agree with you absolutely that we have enough of categorization already in place. So why this categorization of men and women when ultimately we all are humans? Mm-hmm. So I would just like to say that we are a civilization that is evolving. And any civilization's evolution is evidenced by the way it treats its social, cultural, and political issues. And the way I have seen life in my 30 years of age till now, or my conscious 20 years of political, cultural, and social analysis, because I have been a sociology student, then I have been a law student, and then I did my practice as a lawyer, and then I did my post-graduation in international law, and now I am a PhD candidate about to begin my research on such issues. So all my analysis over these years, or last 15 years of my study and academic work and professional life, I have seen that it takes all of us a certain level of evolution in our brains to identify each other as human beings or as mere souls. Forgetting if I am having such an anatomy or a makeup or jewelry that makes me identifiable more as a woman. And if you have beard and mustaches and, certain anatomy, it makes you recognized as a man. So that is two genders we are aware of. And now this rainbow pride movements that we are experiencing, gay pride walks, that LGBTQ people also want themselves to be recognized. Their quest is not to be recognized as LGBTQs per se. Perhaps if we look at it from an angle with a deeper lens, we will find out they want to be recognized as human beings. They want to study like you and I studied in normal schools as normal people. So this is where the empathy gap begins.
Yeah.
Ends as well. That we fail to recognize each other as human beings first. We have categorized each other into genders, whether it is two genders or whether it is the LGBTQ, men, women, and so on and so forth, as anybody wants himself to be or herself to be acknowledged, validated, or recognized. So I think that it is more about knowing that if we try to create hatred because of a narrative that favors me as a woman, I create a hateful narrative against men. I am not doing it just against the men who probably is my husband, my lover, my ex-boyfriend, or a person related to me in some way who has hurt me, harmed me, or caused me any distress in my life. It is that vengeance from my heart against that one person, or my revenge against that one person, that might lead me to go against the whole species of men as a whole, in a way. So this is a wrong approach, and many women are falling prey. I have had my share of gender discrimination being born in an Indian household. I have had my share of being bullied, being in a narcissist environment, being affected and caused distress by certain men I owed nothing to. So this does not mean that I will lose empathy for all the good men out there. This does not mean that. So as a person, I have chosen to be balanced, that I would look at it from a perspective where men and women are equal. They have the same flesh and blood, albeit different physical endurance levels, because that is how nature has created us. Admiring the differences, acknowledging the similarities, then moving ahead. What are my limitations as per my gender? Also learning what are a man's limitations as per his gender, his mindset. That is where this balanced perspectives thread starts weaving itself, and then an intricate web in a society gets created, maybe after a few years, where more and more women will acknowledge that my husband, my brother, my dad, my friend, or all the men I love in my life, they deserve equal respect, love, affection, understanding of their issues, as do all my female friends and relations that I have in my life. So this kind of awareness level is most important to be brought into young girls right from the beginning. Like we say that in India, if you read some news in India, that a girl has been raped. Of course, I denounce any such crime right from the beginning. I reject such treatment to women outrightly. But the point is, they would say that teach boys to be more sensitive towards women. But I would also like to tell, I am not a mother yet, but I would also like to create awareness through platforms like yours and any other or many others, as many as my voices can reach to, sharing that we must also tell our girls to be respectful to the boys. Because if we have young minds, girls and boys, being respectful to each other, they will grow into adults that are respectful towards each other in their families, in their households, in their schools, in their work environments, and in their social settings, in a larger scenario. So
Mm-hmm.
it is important for us to start this education, this learning process right from the beginning, where not only boys need to be sensitized towards the needs of girls, but also girls need to be sensitized towards the needs of boys and men, so that they also have balanced perspectives. And all the issues we are discussing today, maybe there comes a time 20 years, 10 years down the line, as has been the case with the onset of feminism in 1960s onwards.
Yeah.
Now it has reached a saturation point. So now I think it is time to look at the pyramid in an upside down manner. So maybe this movement of men's rights and creating awareness about the issues that men face, maybe it will also reach its primal stage, and we will, after 20 years, maybe in a position to discuss the progress men have made in
Yeah.
terms of acknowledging their own problems, coming out with their own voices, and telling their stories to the world, like women brave the world and tell their stories as brave hearts.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all. I from my experience of talking with um, advocates for men, um, I think that they would just be really happy if we would, treat men and women the same in terms of justice in the law. And they're not looking for special favors. They're not looking for praise, for no reason. This is like, I think that in general they would just like, if they find themselves in a legal situation, they just want to be treated fairly. And that this goes back to the Johnny Depp thing, because I do think that the Johnny Depp trial really had a massive effect on people's perspective on domestic violence, on false allegations, on the ways that we can essentially destroy someone's reputation and cancel them because he lost work, and at the time I thought, well, I don't know if a lot of people are going to notice this, but because it actually became such a massive focus, and sure, there were people who were like, this isn't important, these are just really rich spoiled brats, and they're fighting online, and they thought of it as that, but it's actually had a tremendous impact, and I'm seeing a lot of people, but they're talking about this in the way that I think is correct, which is not to speak about the individuals in this case and like whatever the details of that are, but looking at the broader picture. Like, this kind of thing happens to men all the time, and most of those men, they don't have Johnny Depp's money, they don't have his resources, they don't have the ability to fight for their to be heard, right? They generally, if we're told that a man beat a woman, and there's, without any evidence, they just say the claim, right? Most people will just believe it, because we have this is the not just the empathy gap, but there is like an internal bias that we presume that any relationship between a man and a woman that has antagonism in it is bad for the woman because she's in more danger from the man. And the truth is that women have all kinds of ways they can abuse men, that they might not even put like themselves at any physical risk in some cases, and that we should consider all of those options, and we can do that and be fair, like just follow the evidence. That's really all that matters, right? Hello? Uh-oh. Are you there?
Yeah, yeah, I am there. It seemed
Oh,
that we just froze for a
did
minute.
you? Yeah, it froze for a second. Did you hear what I
Yeah.
said?
Yeah, I
Or
mean,
did
you
it
were
break?
just sharing about the Johnny Depps. I've been listening to all that you said. Then you said that nobody has, I mean, most of the people do not have resources like Johnny Depps to continue fight for justice and to reinstate his name against the false allegations that were made on him. So I was listening. Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay. And then after that, I basically said that I think that we would just be very satisfied if men could just get treated fairly in courts. As an example. And I was talking about how, but the I think the really difficult hump is that people we're already conditioned to have a bias in favor of the comfort of women. So and this is why a woman can just make an allegation and without evidence or anything, and people will just believe her because why would they lie? And that, do you see what I'm saying? And I guess the problem is that it kind of opens up, the possibility of women taking advantage of that bias to do sinister things to men, or to anyone they want to destroy, because we're not allowing ourselves to be skeptical when it comes to women. And this is actually not good for women either. So when I say this, yeah, because if we presume that all women are great all the time, then there are no truly great women, because we treat them the same as bad women. So the distinction or the contrast or pointing out the difference between a woman that is, using a system to destroy someone simply out of self-interest or whatever it is, right? Someone who is clearly selfish, narcissistic, destructive. If we don't distinguish between that and a good woman who is honorable and cares about justice and, it wants to do the right thing, then we can't. How can we praise good women if we don't think that there is a difference between good women and bad women?
Absolutely. I would just like to quickly say something. Pardon my language if it is offensive to anybody. I would just like to say not all women are saints and not all men are vultures. That sums up everything you have been sharing in last few minutes, actually. So the cultural conditioning that we all have had in the years that we have been growing and we have evolved into these adults, who can talk, discuss, question, argue, and raise their voices against the discrimination, whether in favor of just one gender, which is women, or in favor of the balanced agenda, which people like us have, on the same side we are. So we have an agenda that supports both the genders and actually supports the human rights for all human beings. That's the narrative we support. So women are actually not being questioned when they have unreasonable demands, like, for example, that fair sex should be treated fairly in court proceedings. So we expect everybody to be treated fairly in law, because under law, everyone is equal. That is what the American Constitution or American Declaration of Human Rights says. That is what the European, Human Rights Convention is all about. That is what Indian Constitution is all about, right to equality, that everybody is equal irrespective of their gender, caste, creed, religion, sex, or anything. So, whereas the written word says that we all are equal, or we are born equal, but everywhere we are in shackles, like the John Locke theory says, the political scientists of the yours. So it is but pertinent to mention that all men and women, they study the same way, but as we grow and realize ourselves as gender, it is a realm of psychology to actually discuss this more. But as much as I understand psychology as a legal professional or as a social scientist, I would like to say that it is actually from the early years, like I was mentioning in the previous question's answer, that young girls and young boys need to be groomed and mentored into the children who have balanced perspectives right from their schooling years, which is that education system needs to actually take a step forward into bringing curriculum that actually sensitizes both the genders towards the needs of each others as they grow in that school environment and get ready to face the world after their high school and their senior secondary levels. So when we see that women and girls, they are growing in empathy, this general bias that is actually that I am a woman, I should be given, it is matter of a right for me to claim that it is written in bus that this is my seat, this seat is reserved for women. So I can ask even an elderly person to get up if it is not written anywhere that an elderly person seat is also reserved. So that is how we have compartmentalized the benefits and allowances we have given to women. So this is actually a government created or a policy created lacuna that we need to address. And the only way we can address is through education. If we educate our girls and boys into the mindset that girls and boys are equal, and when they grow, their needs may vary, but their learning experiences still remain same because they are studying in co-educational institutions, this might have a larger impact on telling or making sure that our girls and boys grow into little more balanced adults. And as far as Johnny Depp's story is concerned, it is one of the most momentous legal battles or legal sagas of our times after COVID that has actually pointed towards how false allegations could ruin a career, a life, a household, and how it can cause a person mental stress to the brink of pushing him to commit suicide. If we know the testimonies of Johnny Depp, he had been upset to the extent that he would have committed suicide. So the level of false allegations destroying the life. I have few clients currently in Ireland, in the Republic of Ireland and the United Kingdom and Portugal, Poland, who are actually suffering from false allegations. They are parents or they are the estranged partners who have been at the verge of taking their own lives, or just trying to find out where they can get help from. And they are men, alienated fathers, rape accused persons, persons accused of domestic abuse, which are false allegations. So these men, they are normal men who have made themselves good name, earned a lot of money to support their families, their wives and children, and now they are at loggerheads with their wives or their estranged partners because they have been treated with false allegations in terms of their marriage, in terms of their parent-child relationship. So now they are struggling. So Johnny Depp's case has actually helped to give voice to those men who earlier, prior to this famous person coming out in open, always thought that they do not have a voice, they do not have a choice. So this is all matter of choice. If we give men equal choices as we have given to women, I think a lot of problems will get sorted. Because there is a question that always not only perplexes me but also makes me go curious every time I think about it, because I am still trying to find answers to it. And the question is, we see and we say and we accept that the world is men dominated. All the hierarchies of all the professions, be it doctors, legal professionals, renowned psychiatrists or psychologists, or who's who of the world, let us just generalize it and say it, are men. So now if every hierarchy has men at the helm of affairs, how do you have a world that has law, policy, governance, education, court administration system, and everything supporting women so vehemently that it has completely forgotten there are men and boys too related to those women. Let us even not look at them in isolation or seclusion. These women, they are not just women, they are not lesbians, or they are not just women living with women in household. They have fathers, they have loving husbands, they have adorable sons, they have friends who are men who support them and are just a call away to help them when they need them, when they are needed by these women. So the question is basically, how come everything favor women, even if there are systems in the world that has continued for over thousands of years, where only men have been at the helm of affairs, and we have lived in a patriarchal setup forever, and we shall continue to live forever till the civilization continues to survive on this good green planet Earth. So this actually puts me to task, when I study all these things, and then this question is actually on my screen again because I keep writing, and then I'm like, why do people come up with such ideas? On Twitter you see a lot of handles that spread hate, that spread a lot of antagonism against men and boys, or people like us who support the agendas related to men and boys. But I would just like to say, yes, I have chosen to support men and boys. But along with that, I would also like to mention that I support human rights. So I support human rights for every person, irrespective of their gender. But why my work is focusing on men and boys is because I have exclusively seen how in Western world, and even latest or recently in India, the domestic abuse legislation, the divorce law, the sexual harassment legislation, there are many other legislations as well that are being exploited by women just to favor themselves in situations where they can actually mint money out of that from the man they have been associated with, whether as being a wife or a colleague in case of sexual harassment at workplace. So, or as a forlorn, forsaken lover who has refused to marry you and had sexual relationships with you, but then you go against the person because you are, as a woman, entitled to go and file a rape case where no questions are asked, if actually you were raped, and there is no evidence even much to say to prove. And the person, as soon as you make the first information report, you are the person against whom the allegations are made is arrested, and it's a non-bailable offense. So the domestic abuse legislation is so powerful, and the criminal procedure code has a powerful provision to give maintenance from a husband to wife. And then the 498A provision under Indian Penal Code, which has been blatantly used and abused by women presently as legal awareness rises. So every woman could tell other women who has such vicious intent or malified intent that law is on your side, so you can just do whatever pleases your heart to this man, and this man is powerless. So men fight in family courts shows the bias that law has against men. Fighting the false allegations on social media platforms show the cultural and the societal bias men face against themselves. When they are narrating their stories, we have, like you have shared, we have list of questions we can ask, or just dismiss them as not any beings, let alone human beings, not alone any beings. And then the bias that we see in terms of data collection. Like I said, I am just about to begin my doctoral degree. So I have been going through a lot of research papers lately, trying to know the research and methodologies that have been used to research on the subjects related to men and boys, the methodologies used, the models created, and the way data has been collected. So anything to do with women and girls, there is another aspect I would also like to bring to everyone's attention here. There are well-researched journals, there are editorials, then there are op-eds, and then there are articles. For editorials, op-eds, and articles, we do not need to have a well-researched basis to write or to make any statement claiming this number of women have been disproportionately affected by, say, for example, domestic abuse. 40% of women live or continue to live under poverty line, as the UN reports would mention. Don't quote me on the efficacy of data. It's just an example, like I said, 40%. So they would just project it. The figures will be projected in favor of women so much so, and then the favorite word of all the government reports will be disproportionately. So they will say women are disproportionately affected by crimes against women or violence against women. Women are affected disproportionately by rape or domestic abuse. So all these aspects, when you read them in a piece of work, you must actually question the efficacy of data. You must question the source from where the data has been actually gathered, because you say 50% of women or 80% of women have been affected by such and such problem. How many percent of men have actually been affected by such and such problem will be actually the balance of the data that will give you the accurate figure or the percentage with which women have been affected pertaining to that issue.
Yeah.
Nobody questions all of this. We have numerous tweets on every Twitter handle every day. People do question. I follow certain accounts like your account, and there are so many other accounts. They question, and there is one more, misandry examples. They will come up with the data, percentage, and the facts. It's very interesting to read their tweets at times, because they will come up with very interesting facts relating to men, boys, and contrast it to what they are projecting. For example, UN Women projecting anything about women and girls. So this is something which I strongly feel that we must start questioning the sources of data. We must start questioning the practices when women start narrating their stories. But this does not mean that we do not have to be empathetic towards them.
Yeah,
because the simple meaning of empathy is to try to feel what the other person is feeling. So if you can just try to relate to the other person in a way that you cannot live the other person's pain, but you actually can associate yourself to the pain the person is going through, understand the pain or the process the person is going through, that is empathy. So we can be empathetic, at the same time not blindly supporting women victims, but also trying to find out the truth behind the false allegations that they are coming up against with. Destroy lives of those men. Because it is said, in law, that a person is innocent until proven guilty. But with men, this is not the case. With women, she's always innocent, no matter even if she is proven guilty. Her gender will protect her against any harsh treatment that society gives to her. But for men, the stigma lives until he dies.
Yeah.
So this is the empathy gap we must address.
That's true. It's true. I have a proposal for that question you asked, which was, it's a theory that I got, but your question was, how is it possible that men, there are no services, there's no human rights organizations, there's no focus on men's well-being, and yet men run everything, right? They're in basically they dominate the tops of most hierarchies in terms of the money they make, the positions they hold, things like this, right? And this is what I propose. This is what I think. I think that we don't ask the correct question. We see men at the top of a hierarchy and we presume that they're there because and that because they have that position, they're only going to use it to serve their interests and themselves. But I don't think that's why men pursue those things. I think that in general, the question should be, in the case of men making money, for example, you'll find that, you know, most CEOs are men, most of the richest people are probably men, you know, things like that. Well, the question is not who makes the money. The question is who spends the money. And so like if men are and this also you could say is sort of similar to politics. You know, if men get high ranking positions of political power, are they doing it how much of how they got there has to do with what they promise to women. Because if you notice, and I bet this is true in every country in the world, when politicians want to win votes, they appeal to women. There's no politician that appeals to men or male issues, right? No politician has ever run on, I'm gonna, like, you know, reduce male suicide, or I'm going to ensure that, you know, fathers are in their children's lives, or, you know what I mean? Like they never, because nobody thinks that that's, you know, a worthwhile thing. Yeah, they don't think it's an issue. And but if a man says, I'm gonna do this for women, I'm gonna make sure they get paid equally, I'm gonna make sure that, you know, whatever it is, right? They can make a list of things that they're gonna promise to women, and of course, women and men will both go out and vote for this guy because he's promising things to women. So the way I see it is, hold on a second. The way I see it is, oh, okay. The way that I see it is, it seems like the question is not what do men have, but who do men serve, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I would also like to say that genetically, there have been researches, and I won't quote the names, but there are popular researches showing, you know, that men are genetically created to protect women or to protect. So that genetic factor of protection, like you said, the question is not why they do what they do or whether they do it for themselves. The question is, who do they serve with what they do? So a father serves his family, his wife, his children, and a brother serves his sister and his mother and his father as well. So generally, you see the narrative around Mother's Day, that mother, you know, it's through a mother you are born, you raise relationship to your mother to the highest pedestal, because, you know, the world wants to project mothers and nurturing, and you see the level of femininity attributed to Mother Earth, Mother Nature, this you know, particular word mother, or ascribing the feminine characteristics to everything that nurtures, cares, protect, nurtures, cares, and loves. But when it comes to protection, it is always the father. Definitely fathers protect you, but like I would just like to say, as a child, it is, you know, a father's discipline and a mother's love that makes your childhood a fulfilling experience and nurtures you to grow into an adult who has balanced perspectives. Like I had that experience with my parents, who helped me to grow into an adult who had balanced, or who has balanced perspectives, because I was taken care of in a way where my father instilled discipline in me, and my mother nurtured me with her loving care and attention and everything a mother does for a child. You know, in this case, every mother and every father does for their child. But it is our rating as a society that we give 5+ rating or 5-star ratings to mothers, forgetting that a mother cannot have a child unless and until she has a father, you know, donating sperms, or fathered sperms create a child in mother's womb. So there are biological researches also showing that when a couple conceives, as a mother goes into physical changes during the period of pregnancy or the gestation period, there are scientific research based evidences showing how a father also undergoes the same changes, which actually prepare him with that protective instincts running high, with those hormones secreting in his head, that now he has to prep himself up for a role of a protector from a creator or a procreator, that he has created that child, with the help of that woman. So if a woman has a womb to take care of the child, that is the way a woman's body has been created by the nature. And I feel proud as a woman to be as a carrier of a new life. But I cannot have that new life. Imagine like 100 years ago, this technology of embryology, or the artificial techniques of reproduction, they were probably non-existent or non-popular. So now we say that, okay, I'm an independent woman of modern 21st century. I don't need a man to procreate or to have babies. But my baby certainly would need a father, even if I decimate the necessity of a father in my child's life. But as a person, I know that a child needs a mother and a father. No matter how much I try to not to have access to my child's father in my child's life, that will be negative for my child's childhood as well as for his adulthood, because it is a vicious cycle we create for all those mothers who are into litigation battles with their partners. If they bar their ex-partners, who are fathers to the children of those women, if they bar their ex-partners from having access to those children, they are actually creating a very unhealthy environment, not only for themselves but also for their children. Because when these children become adults, they will probably also fall in that vicious cycle of parental alienation, because they will certainly be in relationships, have children, but may not live in the relationship with their partners, but still have children living with them and stopping them from having access to their fathers, because they are estranged partners to them now, just like their mothers. So it's a vicious cycle. We have many examples of it on Twitter and all the social medias these days. And they also propagate false allegations against the partners, feed children with the toxic mindset against their dads, that dads are not good, or dads have hurt the moms. So it's about the cultural conditioning, which the world, I think, not uniformly but largely at the same time has witnessed, whereby every person everywhere, irrespective of geography, has learned to be more sensitized towards the needs of women, towards the aspirations of girls, towards the dreams and the support system that a woman and a girl wants for herself. So it's through different periods in history that I feel world has actually tilted more and more and more towards this cultural conditioning, with society strengthening the basis of this. Now the roots are so deep that we cannot cut these roots, but we can actually create another segment of roots which will have its branches that support an equal number of men and boys against the already existing number of women and girls that we have a support system for. They have a choice and a voice, and I strongly feel that men too need to have a choice and a voice, because rights are all about choices. It's all about the choices we make, the freedoms we cherish. And as men and women, if we do not learn to coexist, and if we perhaps do not appreciate that law needs elected members to put this law in practice, who actually appreciate the balanced perspectives, we are probably in for a doom, a doomsday where everything will just become anarchy. So it is important for us to understand the necessity of legal or the legislations to be created that support both the genders equally, or just become gender neutral, so that everybody knows that it's their right to claim protection under law. So
Yes.
if we stop using the narrative which actually focuses on women and girls and not introduce a narrative that supports men and women, or that supports men and boys along with girls and women,
Hmm.
we just create a narrative that just supports all citizens equally and have policies. Like you
Yeah.
said, that's the simplest solution we can have to all these ongoing gender wars, because we have more pressing problems to look at: health emergency, environment emergency, floods. You
Hmm.
see the
Hmm.
typhoons, the hurricanes, we can see the world is devastated with these days. So we have more pressing emergencies: employment, inflation, unemployment, inflation. We got all these issues to take care of than the gender battles that we fight from our Twitter war rooms or Instagram handles or LinkedIn profiles and Facebook pages and TEDx talks and what not on earth. So I
Yeah.
think if we avoid, if legal systems reform themselves and people who are more awakened come to power, uh, the law could actually lead the way. I always feel that any social empowerment can happen through law, and a law is only as good as its implementation. So if we want to empower ourselves socially, first we need awareness, which platforms like yours and people like all of us, when they get together, they try to create. And I feel that it should be the beginning for a revolution of knowledge, where we question and discuss and raise doubts when we see anybody raising false allegations, irrespective of gender. So it's high
Yeah.
time we rise above genders now, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. All right. So I think we got to wrap it up because we've gone for over the hour. So I
Yay.
wanted to thank you once again for coming on the show and sharing all of your knowledge and expertise on this on these subjects. I really hope that you guys continue to do this work. If you guys want to look at her, I shared your Twitter as well as the website Split the Difference, so people can go look at it. I don't know if there's any other places that you think people should check out.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
can share the details with you. So it's the social handles and
yeah, you can just send it to me and I'll add it to the description. So I guess guys, again, check out the social media links. I'll add more when she gives me more. But we gotta end the show here because I gotta move on to something else. So thank you guys so much for coming on. If you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications so you know when our shows go live. Leave us a comment, especially on this video. I'd like to see your thoughts. I think that we probably won't get comments for maybe a little later because this show is earlier than I normally do them. But yeah, leave us a comment, and most importantly, please share this video because sharing is caring. Thank you guys so much for coming on today's episode, and we will talk to you all in the next video.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.